Hi again, and welcome to the second part of the lecture on brain-based learning. In this lecture, you will be able to gain knowledge on what brain-based learning is and the principles it is based on. Also, you'll be able to recognize the teaching strategies that can be applied in this type of learning. So since we're done with the first one in our list, we will continue with the rest of the list for this video. We will talk about what brain-based learning is, its principles, strategies, and on its importance. Hope our objective is clear today. Ready? Let's start. Now that we have a general idea on what function each region of the brain does, remember we talked about the two hemispheres, the lobes. Now that we know those things, I guess we are ready to talk about brain-based learning. Any idea on what brain-based learning is? How do we define it? Well, according to various sources, brain-based learning is a type of learning which is designed as brain-friendly in consideration to the findings about the human brain. So why brain-friendly, you might ask? Because it addresses student learning and learning outcomes from the point of view of the human brain, right? So student learning in connection to how the brain develops. And it also considers how students learn differently as they age, grow, and mature socially, emotionally, and cognitively. And because it involves specific strategies for learning, which are planned based on how human attention, memory, motivation, and abstract knowledge acquisition works, brain-based learning in teaching can optimize learning holistically. Holistically means as a whole. Now that we already know what a brain-based learning essentially is, let's dig deeper on this approach through its principles. The first one would be uniqueness. So every single brain is totally unique, just like the person itself, right? And as we grow, it becomes more unique because of some factors like genes, experiences, interest, even environment, among many others. Like our brain develops depending on how we grow and how we interact, right? So in our environment, that would mean other people, right? And the place itself, the way we experience our environment. Number two, unsafe environment and stress can alter and impair learning. Unsafe environment. So a threatening environment and too much stress can have a negative effect to learning since it interferes with the mind's ability to focus on what is being learned. Say, if you don't feel safe, you also cannot focus on what you're learning, right? For this reason, teachers are required to provide a favorable classroom or learning environment, a conducive learning environment, not only inside the classroom, but outside the school and also the society. Third, emotions are critical to learning. They drive our attention, health, learning, meaning, and memory. It is founded that the stronger the brain reacts to the content, the longer the information is retained. Again, the stronger the brain reacts to what we're learning, the longer we remember the information. This means that the classroom is actually an emotional place. Also, when teachers treat their students with respect, it builds a desirable environment that tends to help their students succeed. Fourth, all learning is mind-body. Movement, foods, attention cycles, drugs and chemicals all have powerful modulating effect on learning. What goes on with the body affects mental process and vice versa. It's not only the brain, right, that works in learning. It also includes our body. As we had talked about in the first part of the video on the brain functions, we saw, right, that the brain works as the central control panel of the body. So what goes on with our body also affects our brain. What goes on with the brain affects the body. Moving on. Fifth, searching for meaning is inherent. It is in our nature to question things. Inherent means it's natural. It's in our nature. Human beings make sense of what they experience. So they organize their information and experiences in ways that are understood. Lastly, the brain is a complex and adaptive system. Whenever an individual acquires new information or has a meaningful experience, the brain will undergo a physiological change. Information is stored and retrieved through multiple memory in neural pathways that are continually being formed into synapses. This ability is called neural plasticity, like plastic, the plastic material. The plastic material can be molded into different shapes, right? Okay, so just the same with the brain. It has the same ability to be molded. So we call it neural plasticity. Isn't that amazing? That means that the brain can familiarize to whatever information we set our sights on learning. So there you go, the 6 governing principles for brain-based learning. Again, let's read each of them. First one is uniqueness. Second, unsafe environment and stress can alter and impair learning. So we should make our classroom, our school, convenient to learning. It should be safe, non-threatening. And also in the level of stress, we should keep it to the minimum. Third, emotions are critical to learning. The more highly emotional or emotionally invested we are into that information, the longer we can remember it. Fourth, all learning is mind-body. As we said, whatever is going on in our brain affects our body, and what goes on with our body also affects our brain. Fifth, searching for meaning is inherent. Means it's natural to search for meaning or to search for information and clarity. Sixth, the brain is a complex, but it can adapt. And we call that ability neural plasticity. Okay, right, so those are the principles. Now, to support the principles we had just talked about, we are going to take a look at several strategies that we could use as guides in making our learning activities. Number one, chunk down information. What does chunking mean? Chunking. It means dividing something into smaller pieces. Okay? Chunking means dividing something into smaller pieces. The saying, too much too fast, means we won't integrate and recall the information if you teach or if we teach it quickly and in big amount. That would mean cramming in information after information for long hours is not advisable in relation to the brain's health and long-term learning. Cramming. Are you familiar with the word cramming? Cramming is when you study a lot of information, you try to memorize, let's say, a book or a unit in a book in a short period of time. And you do that continuously. Brain-based learning says, no, that's not healthy. Instead, chunk down the information into smaller chunks. Divide it into smaller chunks, wherein the learners could learn pieces of information gradually. Next, number two, honor uniqueness and respect differences. Here we go again with the first principle earlier on uniqueness. Why should we honor uniqueness? Remember UDL? Taking in your learners' differences and keeping them in mind when preparing lessons and activities. That's the same with brain-based learning. Because every brain is different, that means we need to use a variety of strategies to accommodate those differences and to maximize learning for every student. We should look for ways on how we can provide for the differences of our learners' abilities, especially cognitive abilities. Number three, most subjects can be learned under moderate stress. Remember what we said about threatening environment or feeling unsafe in the learning environment? We said earlier that it can affect how you focus and retain information, right? So there is no need to pressure your students that much into learning. A stressed mind will not be able to keep up with the learning process anyway. But take note, a moderate stress is okay. So for example, after every learning chunk or learning activity, have kids create a quiz question. They could stand up and quiz their neighbor or create a short quiz of, let's say, 10 questions. Use themes, peer pressure, and deadlines to add concern. Another example is giving time duration for an activity or project. So giving fair amount of researches or a short time for drill activities. Okay. So learners remember the material better with an emotion, right? So we can do that. Just do it moderately. Number four, improve metacognitive skills. What are metacognitive skills? Metacognitive thinking, or simply awareness we have on our ability to process information. That's metacognitive skills or metacognitive thinking. Examples are on identifying our learning needs and strategies, planning tasks, monitoring our mistakes, evaluating success and failures, and arranging our schedules. Those are examples of metacognitive skills. Thinking about thinking builds learning skills as active processing time. You can help your students improve on this skill by using journals. They can write down their observations about their learning. You can also have discussion, reflection about their performance. Number 5, remember to value non-learning time. What is non-learning time? It is a time given to rest the brain and allow the just learned info to sink in. Okay, non-learning time means it's rest time for the brain, rest time for learning. It doesn't mean you will take it long time. Okay. All right. So studying straight for several hours without break, we mentioned earlier that's not good for the brain, right? Okay. Not good at all. So allow for what we call settling time to consolidate the information. You can take breaks. You also have recess or break in between classes. You have lunch, relax time. You could go for a walk. Okay, all for passive processing. Even a quick energizer that's fun and playful can be a good break. Lastly, trial and error learning. Sure, memorization is the usual way we learn something new. However, trial and error, it's a key to complex learning. It allows learners to try out several methods and see the potential of each technique. So it gives them an edge on understanding the methods, the nature of the methods, and which is the best for which type of problem or task. It is like matching the answer to a question. All right, what do you think about those strategies? I hope you can also add some of your strategies. Anyway, let's review them before moving on. So according to brain-based learning, we should chunk down information, honor uniqueness and respect differences, let them experience moderate stress, improve metacognitive skills, which I have given examples earlier. Remember to value non-learning time. Have breaks in between learning sessions. Lastly, try trial and error learning. So by doing trial and error learning, they will get to know or familiarize themselves more on those strategies or techniques. I hope those strategies are helpful. And to properly end our lecture, here are some takeaways for this lecture on brain-based learning. So first, we have two brains, right? We've learned about the left and the right hemisphere of our brain on the first part of this lecture. Now, the left hemisphere has taken the lead on language processing, linear thinking, and pro-social functioning, while the right hemisphere specializes in visual spatial processing, strong emotions, and private experience. They are like separate and at the same time not, because they complement and balance each other's function. Do you remember the name of that nerves which connect the two hemispheres? What's the name of that nerve again? Those are Latin words, two Latin words, corpus callosum. All right, so bearing in mind those things about the two hemispheres, we should then provide balanced types of activities for our students. Next, the brain is a social organ. This implies that our brain needs constant stimulation and connection. A brain which do not have healthy connection to other brain will not grow, or worse, it will shrink, slowly die. That's why some people have early set of dementia, or they forget things earlier on because their brain doesn't have enough practice. So that's why teachers should integrate social activities in the classroom. Meaningful connection. The brain has a short attention span and needs repetition and multiple channel processing for deeper learning to occur. The brain has a short attention span. That's true, right? That's why earlier we said in the strategies there should be chunking of information, and also there should be a non-learning time or settling time. Remember that we should allow our students to have some non-learning time in between learning to let the information settle. Moreover, fear and stress impair learning. Feeling unsafe and threatened in a learning environment will hinder the learner to fully focus on what is being taught. We have been kind of repeating that over and over in this lecture. A part of the brain which we call the amygdala, you had that word, when you heard that word in our quiz, right? The pop quiz on the brain on the first part. Okay. The amygdala naturally responds to the feeling of fear and will shut down some functions to the brain. Furthermore, if stress is prolonged, it will have a severe impact, not only academically, but on other functions as well, other functions of the brain. That is why learning environment should be physically, mentally, and psychologically safe. Last on the list, the mind, the brain, and body are interwoven, meaning they are connected to each other. That means what goes on in one of the three will have an effect to the other two. Learning is mind-body, right? Mind-body. And of course, mind, the brain. How was our lecture? I hope you had learned some useful informations out of it. Okay. In addition to mind, body, okay, that's why it's important to take care of the body, because it also affects our brain, right? So thinking about how should we take care of our brain? First and foremost, sleep. Have adequate sleep. All right. People are busy nowadays. Students study for a long period of time, right? So usually we don't have enough sleep, but that is a very good practice. Having adequate sleep is a very good practice for our brain. Another one is proper nutrition or good diet. A good diet will help you supply the needed energy to the brain. That ensures a better functioning brain than that which is energy deprived. How many percent of our body's energy does our brain use again? Let's recall what we learned in part 1. How many percent of energy? 20%. That's quite a big part, right? So, okay, we need to always be energized. All right. So that's just more on the last takeaway. Yep, so there it is. Okay, that's the parting information I can give you for this lecture. Bear in mind that through understanding how students' brains actually work or develop, and using that knowledge to benefit classroom learning, we may be able to positively influence classroom education and prepare students to better face their unforeseen future. Okay, we are done with another lecture, and I'm hoping that you were able to follow all throughout our lecture for brain-based learning. Thank you. Goodbye for now.